In May 1992, the people of Russia celebrated what was described by a Moscow newspaper as a holiday with tears in their eyes. The command band of the Air Force Reserve from Robins Air Force Base, Georgia, joined this celebration of the 47th Peace Victory Day and became the first foreign military unit to march through Red Square since before World War II. 66 Air Force musicians took in the sights and sounds of Russia and brought its people the sounds of American music, from military marches to the sounds of Glenn Miller and contemporary jazz. It was a blending of East and West, of old and new, as the American delegation played to packed houses and crowded streets of Russians eager to forge ahead with a budding relationship. The band was chosen by the Department of Defense's Committee for the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of World War II to represent America in the week-long series of events. Even the most seasoned and frequently traveled band members were taken by the significance of the event. Senior Master Sergeant Jimmy Self, the band's first sergeant, stated,
"In the 20 years I have been in the Air Force, I have never visited a place that has left such an impact on me as the trip to Russia."
Band members arrived in Moscow shortly before noon on May 6th and immediately began rehearsals in the Kremlin Palace of Congresses and a local television station. The next day, the band gave 3 performances, beginning with a show at the Sevastopol Guards Motorized Infantry Brigade Stadium that morning. Captain Kelly Bledsoe, deputy commander of the band, had these comments about the performance in the stadium.
This was a very interesting performance. It was our first chance to play in Russia and also our first chance to hear our Russian military band counterparts. The audience included Russians of all ages, and they really seemed to enjoy the different bands. The experience was similar to what a band would do here in the States, playing for the halftime show of a football game, except that the people came to hear the bands.
The band performed at the War Veterans Hospital that afternoon. Their visit to the hospital fulfilled the wish of a wounded Russian veteran of the Afghanistan War, who requested the chance to speak with an American. The band ended the day with a performance on the Soldiers of the 20th Century Against War telethon, which was broadcast throughout the Commonwealth of Independent States. Playing the Air Force song over Russian television was one of many memorable events which occurred during this trip. The band maintained a busy schedule throughout the week. Director of Band Public Relations, Master Sergeant Patricia Lyle, explained,
"Our days typically started before 8 a.m. and sometimes went until midnight or later. Besides the performances, there were tours, shopping excursions, and receptions to fill our time."
The third day began with a tour of the Kremlin cathedrals. The budding free enterprise system was alive and well at the Kremlin, according to some of the band members.
I expected the area inside the Kremlin to be heavily guarded and stern. Instead, I saw beautiful cathedrals and roving vendors trying to sell anything from souvenir books to Russian uniform items.
That evening, the band performed in the Kremlin Palace of Congresses at a concert that also featured the Russian Central Army Band from Moscow, the Santa Cecilia Band from Italy, and the Graf Zeppelin Band from Germany. On the stage where Soviet leaders once denounced America and capitalism, the international bands united to perform Beethoven's Ode to Joy.
It was amazing, and perhaps a bit symbolic, that as we played on the same stage where Brezhnev and Gorbachev had given speeches, the Russian band also entered the stage and wove in with us to form one large band. No one would ever have imagined such a thing happening even a year ago.
The fourth day marked the culmination of the week's activities with the Peace Victory Parade that included international bands, Medal of Honor recipients from the United States, Russian veterans of war, former prisoners of war, and the Moscow Dragoon Regiment dressed in authentic uniforms from the 19th century. The band participated in the ceremony at the White House of Russia and marched toward the Kremlin. When the band reached Alexandrov Gardens, A memorial service was held at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, with Russian President Boris Yeltsin placing the ceremonial wreath. Finally, the band made their historic march into Red Square. The march across the cobblestone streets was the highlight of the trip.
After marching for 6 hours and then marching into Red Square, well, it was one of the most awesome sights I've ever seen.
Chief Master Sergeant David Ballingy, command band manager, commented about his perspective from the rear of the band.
When we were going up the ramp into Red Square, you could see the band members rising to the occasion. The sight of St. Basil's on the opposite end of the square definitely got our attention.
In addition to international media representatives who covered the parade, the square was lined with thousands upon thousands of Russian and other international citizens.
My most memorable moment came as we marched into Red Square, striking up Stars and Stripes Forever right in front of Lenin's tomb.
After a series of individual performances, the bands again formed a massive international band to perform Beethoven's Ode to Joy. The band members finished their day with a visit to the Variety Theater to watch a show by Moscow's top performers, but couldn't pass up the opportunity to be participants in the activities. The band made a trip to Zagorsk on its last day in Russia. On the picturesque tour, band members got the opportunity to see Russians in their daily life. They saw that Russians had little mechanization, fewer staples, and a different way of life.
The ride over to Zagorsk was enlightening. It was really interesting to see the people working in the fields with only a shovel.
Walking through the area, you got a real feel for how the people's lives were. A Russian woman remarked to me how nice it must be to live in America, and I said yes, but that Russia was a beautiful country also. She said, yes, but it is so poor. It is a bit sad that what I paid for a few dolls was enough to feed her family for a few weeks.
Master Sergeant Lyle said that after she returned to the United States, her family remarked how similar photographs of Russia looked to parts of the United States.
It's interesting. I had taken some pictures to some relatives in rural Alabama, and they said Russia looks just like here.
On their last evening, the jazz ensemble performed at the Hotel Russia for all Medal of Honor winners and veterans who had participated in the week's activities. The veterans of World War II were once again dancing to the sounds of Glenn Miller. The band members said a high point in the evening occurred when the director of all Russian military bands sat in with the jazz ensemble to play some swing. Throughout the trip, AFRA's band members were impressed with the interest shown in them by the Russians. Hundreds of Russians turned out for each performance. At each event, the people went out of their way to welcome band members.
They place more value on what we do than we expected.
After a short rest and layover at Mildenhall, England, the band flew directly to Andrews Air Force Base, Maryland. There, they were greeted by Lieutenant General, U.S. Army retired Claude Kicklider, who serves as Executive Director of the World War II Commemoration Committee. Following another short waiting period, the band quickly transferred to a C-141 Starlifter aircraft for the final leg of the journey. As the C-141 touched down on the runway at Robins Air Force Base, both the Commonwealth of Independent States and American flags were waving a signal of international friendship. The band was welcomed by spouses, children, and friends on the flight line. Colonel Charles Ferguson, director of the Air Force Reserve Training Development Center and the AFRA's delegation leader, summarized the trip upon his return to Robins.
These guys are great. The code word in Russia was be flexible, and they were.
What was the most interesting thing you saw?
Lenin's tomb, marching by Lenin's tomb with the American flag flying. Just never thought I'd see that.